Hello, everyone, and welcome to the TAPED podcast, the most noited podcast in the world. My name is Michał, and I'm here with my co-host,
Michael.
And today we're going to be taking the 6 Death Grip studio albums and their debut mixtape, and we're going to be ranking them from worst to, from best to least best, because I think we both agree that they don't really have any bad projects.
They do not have a single bad project. That is a fact, and you will respect that fact.
Exactly. Unless you're a little wuss who can't handle a bit of Death Grips.
You are not noited.
Unless you're not open to the loving arms of MC Ride.
I mean, come on. MC Ride looks like an approachable man. How can you not like him?
I honestly, I don't know what I would do if I seen him in the street. I think I probably would just admire him from afar. I don't know if I'd approach him.
I would be too scared to approach him. He's intimidating as fuck.
You say, "Yo, Stefan," and he knocks you clean out.
Oh, I get that reference.
One punch.
Yo, Stefan, you're just gone.
So yeah, we'll go from number 7 all the way to number 1. We'll both reveal our picks, and then we'll take turns talking about what we liked about the album, and then we'll give a few of our best tracks and then a few of our worst tracks, and we'll move on to the next pick.
Simple formula.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go. Alright, so number 7. My number 7 pick, and what I think is Death Grip's least interesting project, is Government Plates.
I hard agree. Government Plates is my number 7.
Sick.
Do you want to start off?
Yeah, I'll go first. Government Plates isn't bad by any means. In fact, it has some of Death Grip's best songs on there. Like the opening track, I'm not saying the title. And Bonnie and Two Heavens, like they're all great tracks. But the problem for me with this album is that there's so many instrumental redundancies throughout the whole track list. Like near the middle of the track list, after track 5 and before the final track, they just become so interesting and unoriginal to the point where they're not really attention grabbing anymore. Like, I don't even know what the point of it was. MC Ride isn't present for most of these tracks, which is a bummer. And I feel like this could have been better executed, but it's a simple decent enough project for Death Grip standards. It's still good. There's still some great production, but just a lack of MC Ride is just a bit of a no-go for me, at least. So yeah, I probably think Government Plates is their worst for that reason alone. So yeah.
Yeah, right off the bat, I do want to say that I still do quite enjoy this album. But yeah, I don't think there's many bad songs here, honestly, but I also don't think there's many standouts, really. I think it kind of plays it safe, as safe as a Death Grips album can be. And, there's a lot of tracks here that are very in your face, very aggressive. I think the production on a lot of these tracks is really quite impressive. But on other tracks, it just seems a bit, a bit scarce, a bit half-baked. And yeah, you already mentioned this. I think the album starts off very strong, especially the opening track. But it does kind of seem like as the album progresses, it kind of seems to lose track of itself. Yeah, so overall, I don't think it's a bad album, but I definitely think it is easily Death Grip's most least consistent album.
Feels kind of rushed as well in a way.
It does, yeah. Yeah, it's just their least consistent album, in my opinion. I don't think it's bad by any means, but I don't think it's anything to write home about.
Best and worst tracks on Government Plates for me is the opening track. I'm not saying it. And Bonnie in Two Heavens. And the worst on Government Plates is Feels Like a Wheel.
My favorite tracks are You Might Think He Loves You For Your Money, but I know what he really loves you for. It's for your brand new leopard skin pillbox hat.
Hey!
Thank you. Two Heavens and This Is Violence Now. My least favorite tracks are I'm Overflow and Feels Like a Wheel.
Yeah, I've never liked Feels
Some
Like a
agreement
Wheel.
there with our least favorite as well.
Yeah, I've never really liked Feels Like a Wheel.
It's meh.
Moving
yeah.
on to our number 6 pick, I chose Year of the Snitch.
I chose No Love Deep Web.
Year of the Snitch is a bit of a weird one for me. Like I think it's cool, and it's a really cool, like, refreshing sound for Death Grips, but I just find it weird to describe. Like, it's really creepy, and it's like, it's really, like, it makes me uncomfortable to listen to it, not gonna lie. And, like, I find it so hard to describe. Like, all I could say is that it's a really fucking creepy album, and you immediately get that vibe off of the cover. And, like I said, it's a great, refreshing sound for Death Grips. I really enjoy how they're actually still evolving musically over the past decade. And, it feels kind of tame in a way for Death Grip standards in terms of production, because some of it is not as, like, in your face and abrasive as a lot of other Death Grips like albums tend to be, because there's actually some tracks on here that feel a lot tamer for Death Grip standards. But, you know, it's still good. It's still a great album. Like, MC Ride's lyricism is still as cryptic as you expect him to be. It's decent. And overall, I like it, but it's just a bit of a weird one to describe.
Yeah, my number 6 pick was No Love Deep Web. I think this album, in a way, does feel like a bit of an expected follow-up to The Money Store, but I do think it lacks a lot of the you know, the magic that was captured on that album. It does feel a bit rushed to me. It feels a bit, you know, too forced, like they were just trying to get a follow-up as fast as possible, and, you know, with the whole situation with their label and then leaking it themselves, it does seem like the release of this album wasn't really as thought out as maybe it could have been. But I don't think that's to say that there isn't some absolutely brilliant things about this album. I think on No Love Deep Web, the band evolve into a more kind of bass heavy, more raw and grimy direction. I think the album exudes a lot more punk energy than, you know, The Money Store did. I think the cover it as is a good enough like example of that, like, kind of energy that was encapsulated on this album. There are some tracks on here, however, that I just have to say that they're not that great. There's some duds, and I think this album had potential to be a bit better than it was. I think they kind of just rushed it out as a fuck you to their label. And yeah, I think the album definitely suffers from this. And also, it doesn't feel like this was released just less than a year after The Money Store. It feels like this is the album that might have came out after like a 2-year break with like no music, and like where they kind of lost their direction. But yeah, there are some brilliant tracks on this. It's not all, you know, bad. It's mostly very good.
Best and worst songs for me off of Year of the Snitch. I think the best tracks are Flies, Dilemma, and Black Paint. The worst is Little Richard.
My favourite tracks on No Love Deep Web are No Love, Deep Web, Come Up and Get Me, Hunger Games, Bass Rattles Stars Out the Sky. And my least favourite tracks are Stockton, Lock Your Doors, and World of Digs.
Digs? Is it not World of Dogs?
Oh shit. It is, yeah. I was like, that's a odd title. But
I know. Alright, number 5. My number 5 pick is No Love Deep Web.
My number 5 pick is Ex-Military.
That pains me. Alright, No Love Deep Web is a good album. You know, I do like the minimal approach that the group took with the production. I think that MC Ride still has some really visceral performances. It's got some cool reduction. It's got cool production. You know, the bass is really heavy. The synths are very nice. But, you know, it's not an overly consistent album. There are some duds in the track list, like you said, and there are some moments that are just kind of uninteresting to listen to, like the track Stockton, for example. Like, some of these tracks feel so minimal to the point where they just become kind of nondescript and kind of like bland in a way. Like, I do enjoy the heavy bass on it, and you know, obviously it turned out this way probably because of like issues with the label and all that sort of stuff, and the group leaking it themselves. But it's still good in my opinion. It still has some cool Death Grips moments, and it has one of my favorite Death Grips songs on here, like No Love. That track is great in my opinion.
Hard agree.
And I do enjoy it. It's not my favorite Death Grips album, but it's certainly a good one to me at least.
Once again, I must say this, I really like Ex-Military. Especially at this point, I don't think that I've much complaints about any of these albums that are coming up. If such thing even exists, then I think Ex-Military would be Death Grip's most accessible album, I suppose. It still has, you know, the oomph that all the other Death Grips albums has. It still has, you know, unorthodox song structures and production, everything you would expect from a Death Grips album, but it seems at its most simple, which makes sense. It was their first proper project. They weren't really going crazy with everything like they would on the Money Store. But I don't think this really takes away the enjoyment at all from the album. I think it has some of the best Death Grips moments ever put to tape. And I think that it's... If I was to suggest someone start off with any Death Grips album, I would easily say Ex-Military. Because as I said, it still has that Death Grips formula, has that Death Grips oomph, but it is, I think, the most simple and most easy to digest it's ever been on Ex-Military.
Best tracks for me off of No Love, Deep Web are No Love, Deep Web, and Come and Get Me. The worst is Stockton and World of Dogs.
My favourite tracks on Ex-Military are Beware, Guillotine, Spread Eagle Across the Block, Lord of the Game, Tachyon, and I Want It, I Need It. Worst track, Through the Walls.
Alright, number 4 picks. Number 4, I chose The Powers That Be.
For number 4, I chose Year of the Snitch.
The Powers That Be is basically a 2-disc album with 2 albums that have a very different sound to each other. Like, on one half you have basically a whole EP of songs that have Bjork samples, and the other half feels more like a traditional like Death Grip style approach with like kind of more focus on like heavy synths and like fucking distorted like riffs and shit like that. Like, I think that personally for me, I don't really enjoy The Powers That Be as much as everyone else does, but I do still think it is a great album. I love the way the samples are used on the first half of the album, which I will not name. It's great. It has some of Death Grip's best material, I would say. And the second half of the album features more traditional kind of Death Grip stuff. The production is absolutely fantastic throughout the whole album. I love the production. I absolutely love MC Ride throughout this whole project. He was fucking fantastic. He had some weird and off-the-wall moments, and I thought these sounded amazing. I think that overall, it's just a great album. I just don't like the length of it. That's just my only issue with The Powers That Be.
I think Year of the Snitch is possibly their most unique album in a way. I think it sees them kind of put their rap influences on the back burner and like fully commit to the punk aspect of their music. And I think that like the final product is very intense, very memorable, and it's one that has grown on me quite a bit. I didn't really see myself enjoying this anywhere near as much as I enjoyed Ex-Military or even No Love, Deep Web at first. But after coming back to it a few times, a lot of the tracks on this album are just completely underrated gems. And the approach that they took to, focus more on one of their other major influences, because punk has always been a major influence for Death Grips, but it was never the primary focus like it is here. I think it really paid off, and like the final product is really definitely creepy, as you said. It's definitely different to anything else they've ever released, but it's still just as great, I think, and it still has that Death Grips grit in every single way.
I'm gonna do my best tracks and worst tracks based off of the two sides of the Powers That Be project. First half of the album, which I will not name, by the way, it's my favorite tracks were Up My Sleeves, Black Quarterback. The worst is Big Dipper, and I think the best on Jenny Death is the Powers That Be, on GP, and Death Grips 2.0. The worst, Inanimate Sensation.
Whoa.
I know, I'm not a fan of that track. I do.
Whoa.
I have no remorse.
My favorite tracks on Year of the Snitch were Dilemma, Death Grips Are Online, Black Pain, The Horn Section, Shit Show, Disappointed. I'm making loads of typos and I'm not even paying attention. I'm reading them out. And my least favorite tracks were Ha 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 and Little Richard.
Hey, agreement on Little Richard anyway. Top 3.
The pedestal.
The pedestal, the top of Death Grips discography in our opinions. My number 3 pick, I chose Ex-Military.
For my number 3, I chose The Powers That Be.
I love Ex-Military. I think that Death Grips made a statement when they released this. Basically, they wanted you to know who they were. And you know how they did it? The opening track, a Charles Manson sample into absolute insanity, some grittiness, raw, unhinged production, with lyrics on that basically depict fucking a crumbling, like, it's hard to describe, but just a crumbling mess of a person or a world that they're describing on it. I think that it is basically the epitome of being a drugged out man in the desert, right? Like, as the cover may suggest. Basically, some of my favorite fucking Death Grips songs are on here. I think it's hard to believe that Ex-Military is nearly 9 years old. It is going to be 9 years old this month. I think that overall, I fucking love the grittiness of the album. It's raw, it's unhinged. It feels more traditional in its production as it focuses more on sampling. And I think those samples are worked very well. I think the first half of the album is better than the second, as I feel like the second half of the album has a bit of a dip in quality. But I absolutely love this project to death. I think it is a great mixtape. It was a great statement for Death Grips. And I think it's kind of like, I wouldn't say underappreciated, because I feel like that is more reserved for other Death Grips albums. But I still think it is fantastic and a top tier Death Grips project, at least in my opinion.
I think that The Powers That Be is, without a doubt, I think Death Grips' most ambitious endeavor, just through and through. Especially with the length of the track list. It's like no other Death Grip album really approaches the length of this one. I'll talk about the first disc first. I think the production on the first disc, to avoid saying the name, is just completely out of this world. I think that it just showcases that there's really nothing that is, too ambitious for the band to try and pull off. And yeah, these guys can pull off anything. I think the contributions from Bjork and her samples all over this, like half of the project, give it a, while it still has that Death Grips, grit and aggression, the Bjork samples definitely give it a certain amount of beauty and like ethereal qualities, which I think is a very unique combo for a Death Grips track, which tend to be largely just aggressive and unhinged, and adding those vocal samples where it was definitely a nice touch and makes for some truly memorable moments. Second disc definitely carries the torch in terms of quality. I think that the two, while they do feel like separate entities, also do merge into one another pretty well, and I think they make for a good back-to-back listening experience. I know the second, you said this already, but the second disc is definitely more, typical Death Grips, with just heavy, just overpowering industrial synths, bigger than like life, just aggression from MC Ride, aggression from Zach Hill and Andy on the synths. Everything is just very grandiose, more so than I think it has been on any other Death Grips project up to this date. And yeah, this is definitely quite the lengthy album, quite the album to digest, but I think it is a very rewarding listen, especially, listening to the two discs back to back. Yeah, it's a brilliant project in my opinion.
Alright. Best on ex-military for me are Spread Eagle Cross the Block, Tachyon, Lord of the Game, Beware, Guillotine. The worst 32 instrumental tracks, Cutthroat and 5D, and the worst song is I Want It, I Need It.
When it comes to this album, I just put the best and the two discs together in terms of best and worst tracks.
Fair
For
enough.
best tracks, I have On GP, Inanimate Sensation, Have a Sadcom Baby, Blackwaterback, Big Dipper, Beyond a Life, and Centuries of Damn. Worst tracks, Death Grips 2.0, if I had to pick. I still like that song.
Top 2.
Mm-hmm.
We both have the same
Yeah.
albums.
Let's see if we have the same order.
Okay. My number 2 pick is Bottomless Pit.
My number 2 pick is Bottomless Pit.
Woo! Agreement. Let's go.
Hell yeah.
Right, Bottomless Pit. I had a hard time choosing between Bottomless Pit and The Money Store, but ultimately I decided to go with The Bottomless Pit at number 2, mostly because this one feels like this album tried to recapture kind of what The Money Store had going, and I think that it is an amazing project. Instrumental wise, this album is pure insanity. Like, right off the bat, the opening track, Giving Bad People Good Ideas. I get a headache to that song every time I listen to it, and I love it. I absolutely love the track listing. I think it's very consistent. I love the insane and like visceral and distorted parts of the production. There are tracks here that feel a bit more calmer and kind of classifies some of Death Grip's more tamer tracks, you could say, like and Trash. But fuck me, man, I had such a fun time listening to this album. Just, I love the raw aggressiveness of the whole thing. The production is absolutely fantastic. There are some weird as fuck moments on this album, like Hothead, for example. That I love those kind of moments from Death Grips. I think they sound amazing. Ride was great throughout the whole project, and Flatlander and Zach Hill were fantastic on the production end of it. I think it is a great album, and it is definitely top tier Death Grips in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's definitely up there with The Money Store in my opinion. I think this was, I knew what I was gonna put as number 1, but this album does give it quite some competition, I think, and I think that people tend to overlook it a bit. I don't think people tend to even put it in the same category as The Money Store, but I think it deserves to be. It does feel like a bit of a, late spiritual successor to the Money Store. It has a similar aesthetic to it, but it just has some tracks that, completely unexpected. I still remember the day that they dropped Giving Good People Bad Ideas, and I remember listening to that track and just thinking, what the fuck am I listening to? What did they just release? And, I was hyped for that album like crazy after hearing that, because I was like, what the fuck is this whole album going to sound like? And yeah, it's that, like, maybe their most playful, their most, like, varied album, I think, to date. I think there's a lot of tracks which just explore different territories, and I think it's a brilliant experience. Yeah, it explores a lot of unique sounds, great ideas, and, very few tracks on this album sound alike. You're going to get something completely different out of every track, and I think that's a brilliant thing. especially if you can make the whole album come together fluently, as well as, you know, changing every track up. Yeah, top tier Death Grips, easily, like top 2.
Easily. Alright, my favourite tracks from Bottomless Pit are Giving Bad People Good Ideas, Hothead, 3 Bedrooms in a Nice Neighbourhood. The worst is BB Poison.
Best tracks: Giving Good People Bad Ideas, Hothead, Ring a Bell, Spikes, Warping, and Trash. If I had to pick a worst track, I'd probably pick 80808, but as I said with Death Grips 2.0, I like that track quite a bit.
Oh, I like that song.
I do too, I like the song, but I just wanted to pick at least one. Least favourite, not worse, least favourite.
That hurts my soul.
Well, you know what would make your soul better? Revealing your number 1 pick.
Okay, number 1 pick, The Money Store, if you haven't guessed already. The Money Store, if you're not dumb.
If you're not familiar with Death Grips and somehow care about this. Yeah, I also put The Money Store number 1, no surprise.
Right, The Money Store. Peak Death Grips, in my opinion. This album feels like a drug trip in a way. Like pure insanity. It's like you did like fucking, I don't know, four lines cocaine and a dose of heroin, and you're just walking through like a city, like a cyberpunk kind of city, just looking around and absolutely just fucking don't know what's going on. The production is in your face, it's digital, it's glitchy, it's catchy as hell, it's chaotic. Ride is a literal god on some of these tracks. Like, some of his best performances are on here. Most of my favourite Death Grips songs are on here. Some of my favourite Death Grips instrumentals are on here, and it sounds amazing. Like, the first track, Get Got, just hooked me in instantly. And it keeps going on and on. It gets more brutal, it gets more in your face, it gets more abrasive. I love it. The closer, Hacker, is probably one of the best Death Grips songs ever. And of course, my favourite Death Grips song is on this album, that being Get Got. Not to completely discredit the whole thing, there are some fucking amazing songs on here, like I've Seen Footage, it has one of my favourite MC Ride performances, System Blower, all those sort of tracks, they sound amazing. Overall, this is peak Death Grips, and there's a reason why it's held in high regard as their best. It deserves the praise that it gets. It is amazing, in my opinion.
Yeah, as much as I in my head secretly wanted to, you know, put Bottomless Pit at number 1 just to like be different, I could not justify not putting this at number 1. It just, through the years, it has proven to be just one of the definitive albums of the 2010s, and definitely the definitive Death Grips release. You know, the formula that was largely there on Ex-Military is present here, but I think they expand that formula to just completely new heights. They play with it, they just explore new territory that not only they have never explored, that, you know, no one really has done before. You know, the production is completely insane. It's completely unlike anything like that ever came before it. You know, even now, like the last albums we were reviewing on Sunday, we compared like the sound, the hard abrasive sound, to Death Grips on the Garden album. Even now, like you get people saying, "Oh, this sounds like Death Grips. Oh, this sounds like Death Grips." Like they kind of like pioneered this new aesthetic, this new, just, you know, in your face, just we don't give one attitude to music, and it was a fresh, you know, thing in the early like 2010s. There wasn't much of that going on, you know. They kind of brought that punk energy back into music, and this album was the trailblazer for, you know, an era of music, I think. Yeah, every track on this thing is absolutely incredible, absolutely special. It all, like, they all have their unique, you know, energy. Production just doesn't sound like the same on any two songs on this album. Every song is just completely and utterly unique. MC Ride completely kills every second that he is part of on this album. His performances throughout were incredibly memorable. I think it's just the right amount of abrasive, just the right amount, just in your face, and it's perfect. It's a perfect, imperfect combination, I think, and it's not only the best Death Grips album, it's one of the best albums I've ever listened to in my life. And yeah,
Ditto.
I don't think I've ever received quite the adrenaline rush from an album upon listening to it on first times as I did way back when I listened to this for the first time.
Ditto.
Yeah, best and worst tracks?
My favorite tracks from the Money Store are Get Got, okay. Get Got, Hacker, Hustle Bones, I've Seen Footage. The worst, in my opinion, is, well, not worst, least best, is probably either System Blower or Blackjack.
My favorite tracks are Get Got, I've Seen Footage, The Cage, The Fever, Hustle Bones, and my favorite Death Grip song of all time, Hacker. I tried to put in a least favorite track like I did for everything else. I couldn't justify putting anything as least favorite, honestly.
Fair enough, I suppose.
maybe if I'm really stretching, Blackjack.
I mean, that's...
But I fucking adore that song.
Same, but that's like a kind of common pick for the least interesting song off of
Yeah, but it's so fucking
the Money
brilliant.
Store.
I would
It sounds
possibly
amazing.
give it a 10.
I gave it a 10.
Yeah. So that was our ranking of the Death Grips albums, mostly studio, one mixtape. Let us know what you think. Let us know how heavy you disagree with some of our picks. Let me know that I'm stupid for putting Ex-Military at number 5.
Let me know that I'm a piece of shit for putting The Powers That Be at number 4. Thank you guys for checking out today's episode. Necessary links are in the description. Expect another episode to go up Sunday.
Yeah,
we
it'll
also
be the
got
new albums.
Yeah, and
did I announce what albums we're doing? I did announce.
Yeah, you did announce them.
I'll give them a reminder. We're going to be doing the new Dua Lipa album, the new Thundercat album, the new Childish Gambino album, and we're going to be looking back at To Pimp a Butterfly to celebrate its 5-year anniversary. And there's going to be a special guest.
Yeah, and expect in a few weeks to see a Tool worst to best as well.
Yeah, except I might even push that forward a bit because I don't think there's many albums coming out, so we may need to fill in the gap.
Fair enough.
Unless you want to do an episode talking about fucking Tory Lane's new album, because I couldn't imagine wanting to do that.
We can.
I'm not interested.
I don't mind.
Yeah, so the next worst to best with another special guest is going to be Tool. I'll see what the schedule like in terms of new albums coming out. It could possibly happen next week.
Alright.
But yeah, stay tuned. All necessary links, our YouTube channels, our Rate Your Music and Album of the Year page, our Twitter, they're all in the description. Our Patreon, if you want to help some random college students talking about money on the internet, and you're an Arabian prince, then please give us a $5. Yeah. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and we hope to see you in a few days on Sunday.
See ya.
Bye.